I know that's going to come to us in the next few months, but we keep talking about maybe pushing back on this, and I got told off for mentioning the politics of it last time, but the government supports this, but also the National Party support this, and they want it to go faster and stronger. So we don't have a decision here. This is a cross-party political thing and central government telling us that we have to provide more housing options. So the issue is that we could ignore it, which obviously we're not, or they'll do it for us. And that's happened to us over and over again in this history. And if in 10 years we do look back, and I'm going to be concerned that in 10 years we do look back and that we've created a sprawling city where young people cannot live. And young people are going to continue to try and buy properties, but that may be in Australia where housing is far cheaper and there are far more options around cities and around public transport than we are providing. So I just want to be careful here. I know that the discussions, a lot of people think this is going too fast, but I just go talk to some people who are in dire housing situations, whether that's trying to get into a kāinga order house, whether that's trying to afford the rent in Auckland, or whether that's trying to somehow magically buy a house at some point in your life. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mulholland.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I'll carry on discussions and as everyone's having a bit of a say. My concern is that essentially, Chair, that government are laying this on us. And it's great to listen to my colleagues. I always enjoy that because it does change my mind quite frequently. Not saying that I can't make a decision, of course, but, I really, that's what I really enjoy about the debate. But I want to say that I feel it's being forced upon us by central government, and I think the team do an incredible job. I've seen a lot of intensification. In fact, since being a councillor, it's the thing I have to deal with the most. I thought it would be roads and rubbish and so forth. But no, it's intensification. So I think we're doing a really good job. Not that I agree with all of the intensification in my area, but anyway, I also take the point that people can't afford homes, but I had to live on 2-minute noodles and women's products for a long time to afford the deposit for my first home in downtown Hamilton. So, yep, it's a hard slog and you have to give it your heart and soul. So I hear what's happening and I see it too. So I feel that it's being forced upon us again, somewhat similar to the sort of Three Waters principle, but that's a view. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments on this one, members? Look, I think we're just about there, but this is, as the words have been changed, this is our preliminary approach. We're working this up. We're looking for the evidence. And look, as we spoke of earlier, we've got to make sure that whatever comes out of this is an enduring and quality outcome. We are talking about the form of Auckland here. And we've given the initial direction on the walkable catchments, city centre, metro centres and the RTN connect station areas and the qualifying matter of special character. But I can't help but think people, even once this is landed, and we heard, and I take you back to the presentation on the housing capacity assessment that we had at our last meeting, there's actually some 900,000 dwelling units made feasible by the current plan now. While we will do this work, and I think it's a good move overall, this is actually not going to build houses. People don't live in planning provisions and they don't live in consents. They actually live in physical houses. And one of the greatest challenges in Auckland now is actually developing it's the constructability, the resources human in that area. That's one of the enormous challenges. I'm not discounting the MPSUD by any means, because there is evidence that since 2016, people do want to live in proximity to rapid transit, to city centre and metro centres. They do want to be connected to their friends, to jobs, etc. And that's something that we've learned, and those first decisions are definitely, I think, reflecting on market demand that has changed dramatically since 2015-16 through to now. But let's do this work, but let's do it well. And if we run into any roadblocks or barriers in terms of the capacity of our staff to do this well, we'll have that signalled, well telegraphed to us early in the new year. At this stage, we're tracking reasonably well, but we do have a few political concerns about doing it as well as our communities expect us to do it. But I'm commending these for absolute support. There's a long way to go on this and a lot of discussion around this table to be had before we get anywhere near firming something up that can show us the yield that is going to come out of our response to the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I don't like this at all, to be honest, if I was really fair. I'm with you. I believe we have capacity within our own Auckland Energy Plan, but it's being foisted on us, and I suppose I'm not sure how to vote because there's a part of me that just says no. But there again, we have to do it. So what's the best of a bad situation is really where I'm coming to. And I think at the end of the day, the final decision is the final decision. So I really support the last recommendation that's just been put up, the amendment, noting how challenging it is, but I really do worry about the rest. I do, and I'm very tempted just to probably abstain. Yeah, well, you've got to endorse, and that's what you want to do. But I'm going to abstain just because I'm not comfortable with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. And Councillor Cooper, your call.
Just quickly, so I do support this because as everyone said, we haven't identified a lot of the areas because we're just determining the way it's going to be approached. And so we'll have another ability. I mean, we've got lots of steps in plan changes. Many steps. And so for me, this is kind of giving us something for our staff to go away and work on. And we keep talking about there's a hurry. If we don't give them the direction, then they can't get on with it. So I've no doubt there'll be some changes, but it might be that it is identified. Actually, we have met a lot of these standards that we're talking about already. We've got a big bunch of 440,000 dwellings that the unitary plan gave us. And so I'm hoping in some ways that though there'll be some more intensification with some of the qualifying matters, we may already meet meet a lot of this without causing too much ruckus, I hope, but also meeting the needs of giving people housing.
Thank you, Councillor. Are we debated? We finished? We are. Thank you. Good conversation, good debate on that one. And of course, this has been well informed by a lot of discussion at workshops as well. And grateful to the local board chairs or their alternates being part of that discussion that's led to these recommendations today. Put it to the vote. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, we will go back to you. I did say I was going to put it to the vote, but we have had some connection issues with the Deputy Mayor and he's definitely stayed on the call all the way. So I would like to go back to him with your consent, members. Are you comfortable? Go back to the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, your call, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I really apologise for my connection problems. It's the first time this has happened, so it'll be the last too. I'm just going to be very, very quick. If we don't stay at the table and carry on the discussions we're doing now and be showing good intent here, this will be done to us, which will give us a far worse outcome. I'm really important. Let's stay in the tent, let's keep on with the mahi and get on with it as best we can and illustrate and show with facts and data our concerns and constraints. But let's keep there, otherwise we will be done to. Cheers.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Hear to that. And we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no.
Chair, sorry.
Sorry, there'll be things that some of us wish to note. So for
We let Kalinda know. Sorry, can we let Kalinda know?
Oppose A4.
Thank you.
Damien.
Okay. Thank you. Now, members, we will go to item 10, and this relates, of course, to the very important stage of having a discussion with Aucklanders. So I'll move, welcome Ross Moffat, Principal Planner, and Erin Shields, Team Leader Planning. And this is our pre-notification engagement plan on the intensification of all parts of the MPS, the parts we've just discussed in the last, those discussed at the last meeting. So I'll move the recommendations, which are A and B. Councillor Dalton? Councillor Dalton, would you like to move? Do I have a second, please? Sure. Councillor Fesso-Collins. I'll go to Councillor Fesso-Collins. So moved by Councillor Dalton, seconded by Councillor Collins. And this is on page 48 of your agenda. I'll hand to Ross. No, it'll be Erin. Going to Erin first.
Good afternoon, Chair and councillors and local board members online. We have a very short presentation, but it's quite an important piece of this jigsaw, and this has really been referred to in the previous item about how we progress from here and what we do as an organisation in terms of the development of the plan changes and our engagement. So once again, I'd like to just introduce Ross, who's our Senior Policy Planner, who has done the lion's share of the work on this report. So I'll hand over to Ross.
Welcome, Ross.
Thank you, Aaron. Kia ora tātou. Yes, this item is very much about our pre-notification engagement. We have covered some aspects of it in the previous item, just towards our intensification plan change as required by the MPSUD by next August. Just jumping to the first slide, I didn't want to go through a lot of background, but how are we doing there? Yeah, just something I wanted to highlight there is what I think John had previously highlighted and others is that given the significance of the matters in the MPSUD and obviously their interest to Aucklanders, we believe, and I think it's best practice to actually engage with Aucklanders and give them the opportunity to give us feedback about our preliminary response and proposals on the MPSUD before the plan change is formalised and notification happens. Obviously giving that step, one that we don't have to do, but we think is important to have in there, it lines us up a particular process and a timeline that is quite challenging. But we think there are benefits to that, and if we could just get to the next slide, please. So the overall approach and what are in the recommendations here to engagement is that in the next phase that we go through a process of briefing and engagement with local boards and mana whenua in particular on obviously just what the MPSUD is, what our work to date is showing, what we're planning to do in terms of the process and the analysis and the time frame that will take. So we actually engage on that, but we also take preliminary proposals, if you can, initial preliminary proposals to those forums, the local boards and obviously our mana whenua partners. Before we engage, and certainly we'll bring that back to Planning Committee about the proposals before we go to engagement with the rest of Auckland and Aucklanders and our key stakeholders, and I'll talk about key stakeholders in a moment, as that came up, I know, earlier today in our public input section, a request to involve key stakeholders in that process. But our engagement would be around our preliminary response, and it's worth highlighting that there are aspects of our preliminary response that we don't have much discretion over. They are givens, they are directives from the MPSUD, for instance, the fact or the position that we look at 6 stories at least around Metro and City Centre and RTN stops, for instance. That's a given. We don't have discretion over that, but we do, for instance, have discretion on other matters that we are interpreting or applying in a particular way. And you would have heard of that in the last couple of items, and certainly last month with recommending approaches to things like just walking distances and walkable catchments, things like the treating the qualifying matters and special character areas as a qualifying matter. Those are matters for discretion, which I think are appropriate certainly to put to Aucklanders and stakeholders. What is their view on that? So we need to be very clear about what is information, if you like, and what is available for feedback and therefore subsequent potential change, so be it on the basis of feedback that we receive. So our intention in this approach is to bring the feedback back to council and our partners, mana whenua and local boards, consider that feedback and suggest and talk about ways that we might want to improve or change the approach, which would then become the intensification plan change. And hopefully get that across the line. All things going well, and of course we talked about risks, but by the 20th of August next year. Just next slide, which will probably be the last slide. Slightly small to read, but I thought it was important to, I guess, take you through the implications of what this actually means in a more detailed, specific sense for our audiences and partners, as well as the different phases. Now, this is a bit of a recognition of the IAP2 spectrum of consultation, which is in participation. It's quite important to be quite clear about what we're talking about and what the decisions are available to us through the process. Oh, sorry, it stands for the International Association for Public Participation. And I think at one stage it was council consultation policy that we follow that approach, but it's a spectrum that goes from whatever decision or statement that we're trying to seek feedback on, whether that's just simply an information thing, right through to a spectrum of empowerment. In fact, we're actually giving decision making over to some group or body. So in between there, you've got consultation, you've got informing and some other aspects. Collaboration. But just in terms of that spectrum, it helps us with framing our engagement planning. So just in that first phase, preparing our preliminary response between October into early New Year, local boards, mana whenua, we're certainly looking to inform them about our process, about the MPSUD, but also involving them in the development of our preliminary response through to the public engagement phase next year. In terms of key stakeholders and wider community, we're seeking to inform, and I think fairly soon we'll be up online with some key messages and information on council have your say or our Auckland and those sorts of things. There's a communication and engagement strategy plan to develop. But for key stakeholders, it was talked earlier today about the LTP process, and we have a list of key stakeholders. I think we do need to create and identify that list afresh for this process. The one for the LTP process was a regional stakeholder list of about 150 groups, none of which included any particular residents group or association, just as an example. So we do need to develop a fresh list for key stakeholders. It may include many similarities. So we are seeking to and not just inform, but I suppose engage, find out what people's issues are, and explain how we're going to be going about doing the work. So when we get to our engagement on the preliminary response, it's certainly informing about what that response is and communicating that and in our areas for discretion, but then obviously consulting, asking for feedback, and receiving that for consideration at the next stage, where we do prepare the plan change and take that feedback on board. And we're going to involve local boards and mana whenua in that discussion with yourselves, and certainly inform stakeholders in the wider community about what that feedback was, so it's sort of closing that loop. So we get to the notification step, which of course is through the RMA Schedule 1 process. There's submissions, the hearing process will roll on as we know it from then on. So there was obviously the formal feedback and consultation phase for submissions at that point. So that's the proposal, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Erin. Questions for our first question, Councillor Simpson, please.
Thank you. And listen, I think you've done a great job, so thank you very much around this. I'm just going back to the resolutions that we will pass, hopefully, around this, because I really support the direction. If we're going to do this, let's get just like we did in the unitary plan, let's do the pre and then the proposed, or the draft and the proposed, whatever it is. And I just wonder if I've got two questions. One, when we talk to local boards, is there an absolute condition that local boards then talk to their communities in this plan? Because when we talk to local boards, that's sort of 795 people. I want confidence that they or the organisation has got some support to go out to those communities and help feedback, so it's just not the local boards. And the second thing, if you had to look at B, do you think that B is written in the best way it should be? Because we talked about the key stakeholders, and we know we've got the list of key stakeholders, but I'm kind of thinking, we note that a more detailed plan for involving local boards, local communities, mana whenua, key stakeholders, and with Aucklanders. Is that kind of a better way of doing B?
So the first point around the local boards having to engage with their communities, maybe is that I don't think they would necessarily need to in the first instance, but they would want to understand what their community's feedback was through the public engagement to then maybe revisit their view. And some may wish to reserve their position on what proposals they see early next year until they have heard from their community. So I suppose it could be either or both. I'm sure that many local boards will be in a position to want to be involved and give their viewpoints as elected reps at workshops, if that's what it comes to early in the new year on proposals, knowing what they know and knowing their communities already.
And my second question around...
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm fully... I might have to see it typed out there again as a potential...
So Councillor Dalton and Collins have moved and seconded it, but I just kind of went through the...
Yes.
Just for ease, so local boards, local communities, mana whenua, key stakeholders and Aucklanders.
Yeah. Sorry, through the chair, it's deliberately worded to talk about involving, which again to that IEP2, but even putting that aside, involve is more than engaging. Engaging could be much broader. It could be just inform, consult. But when we say involve, and I think you probably all agree, we're saying local boards mana whenua have a different status, and they should be involved in actually developing these draft proposals. But other Aucklanders and key stakeholders are in a different category, and so it gets a bit muddy.
I'm getting tired. I understand.
Yep.
Thank you for that
Yep.
clarification.
Wrap that one there then. Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, children don't tend to care much about planning issues. My kids have stopped asking how my workday's gone when I get home. But my question is, how are we giving a voice to future Aucklanders? Because this is a generational change potentially, and we need to take into account not just the future people that have a huge stake in it, but also current ones, but also future Aucklanders that may want to move here and buy a house and all the good stuff.
Through the chair, yes, you're absolutely right. Through the identification of the key stakeholder groups, but also through our whole formation of our communications engagement plan that we're obviously going to be turning our minds to, we will need to pay particular attention to young people and also other, well, you might call them hard to reach communities or other aspects of our diverse communities to do as good as we can around getting the information across, but making it as palatable and as hopefully as interesting and perhaps compelling as it really is for their futures. So I think we need to turn our minds to how to do that at the next phase when we're developing the detailed plan for how to go about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. It was just clarification around local board involvement, because I'm just thinking back to the unitary plan when doesn't matter if you're local board or governing body, it is the council's proposal, and they're not in a position to make submissions, my understanding, but they can. Last time we attached local board views onto it, so I think we've got to be a little bit careful around, you know, I mean, this is our proposal. In the early part, I think it's really useful to have them well on board putting this together. But can you just remind me, do they have to be mindful about their involvement, particularly, well, I don't think they can make a submission, but sometimes they do individually, don't they? And they might have already, and there's that. So can you just remind me around that, you know, we are not separate entity. We are 170 elected members, and it is our plan change that is going forward for public.
Through the chair, local boards are not able to make submissions on plan changes, but we engage with them prior to and also following the receipt of submissions. We seek comment from local boards, so we can certainly weave that process into our involvement of the boards.
Just need to be really clear about communicating that as well, because it's a long time since the unitary plan, and just reminding all of us of our role.
Yeah, through the
Thank
chair,
you.
if I could add, that first stage, which we're looking at October, is really an information broadcasting type process with local boards to not only explain what the NPS is about and our process through this year, but also how they are involved and when and where that might happen. So to give them the best footing to engage with their communities when that happens in the new year.
That's the other question. I just need to understand, because I mean, I thought it was a whole of council process, right? On the consultation, not local boards have their process to consult on it, because it is actually not a local board function to manage a plan change. And so I think that's what I do think that mucks communities up. You know, that if we're going to go out into our public, it should be the ward councillors and the local board together, not separate local board engagement. You know, this is where people get confused, and some people just can't help themselves when we're consulting to put their view in, you know, and I think we need to be really careful on that. And so I would ask that it always ends up with local board engagement over here, but it is a whole of council thing, this. It's not a local board function to go out and consult with the community about a plan change. We've got a process for that.
And through the chair, we had anticipated that the ward councillors would be most interested in attending those events, whatever they are, with their local board members as well, to show the co-governance that exists. Yeah.
Thank you. Going to Councillor Casey now, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just following on from Shane with regard to invisible communities, as you mentioned yourself, just to invite you to contact the 6 demographic advisory panels for 2 things. One, to find out from them who the key stakeholder groups are for them and add them into our list. And 2, find out from them the best ways to reach out to their communities to get the information that we need. So that was the first one. The second one is really to my colleagues, and it's just my absolute terrification that this is going to get mixed up with the election. It's going to be a political hot potato. If we're notifying in August next year, the election's just round the corner, and it will just be like the unitary plan all over again. That's my big fear. So we should be really lobbying to change the timeline on that for that reason. Or for lots of good reasons, but for that reason in particular.
Okay, we'll just keep an eye on that one for now, okay? At this stage, we're not lobbying to change it, but look, it's not dissimilar to the last time. It's actually very similar in terms of how the plan change for the Auckland Unitary Plan, or the introduction of the Auckland Unitary Plan, is lined up. These timelines are very, very similar.
Remember the blood on the floor during the unitary plan.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you for the guidance that you're giving us on this. One thing that I would really like to see specified is, as the city with the largest Pacifica population in the entire world, why are we not actually specifying Pacifica? Because for me, amongst my Pacifica friends, they've got very strong views on family living arrangements, space, land and around, all sorts of things. And I think given the, we talk about the Aucklanders of the future, but a lot of those are going to be of Pacifica descent. And I don't want to do an amendment because I hope that it's just something that everybody might agree, but I would like to see the Pacifica community particularly included in that.
We just checked that though, because the reason mana whenua, we've got Aucklanders in there, and that's an inclusive Aucklanders, but mana whenua are referenced because there is a statutory requirement.
I understand that. I totally understand
that.
I understand that.
But I think at this stage, they're sitting in behind this is absolute acknowledgement that the Pacific communities are significant in terms of their number in Auckland. And Mātā Waka are actually very significant as well. Those that are not linked to
I agree.
mana whenua groups. In fact, that's most Māori in Auckland. And we're not breaking that out either. I just feel like if we start identifying Pacifica, and if I come to the North Shore, I would have to say in place of Pacifica, it's actually probably Korean and Filipino, you see.
Well, that's my view.
Yeah.
I feel very strongly that we should have Pacifica up there. That is one of the unique characteristics of Auckland, and it's one that we regularly overlook, and I just think it would be good to be included.
Thank you. Councillor Mulholland?
Oh, thanks, Chair. Fabulous. Just an observation. I don't like seeing blood on the floor as outlined by sorry, maybe I'm tired. I was up at 5 a.m. Councillor Casey. That just sounds horrific to me, that people will, yeah. Really seriously, I would also like to support that the staff, if we are able to, can you please consider those timelines, because I just visualise that and it doesn't look pretty. I just wanted to also thank you for the work that's done on this. The other question I had, look, the blood on the floor is really I'm really sorry, but that did throw me because I just imagined it probably does happen. But anyway, thank you for the work. I think 5 a.m. was a bit early. Thank you.
The other point I'd just like to make, members, is we're the ones, it's this council that's been having the workshops. We've had 9 now, I think, multiple meetings. We're the ones that have the MPSUD. It was delivered to us to act upon. And if we were to defer, it basically lands with potentially a number of new members who are not abreast of this. They're coming to it quite cold. And I think it's a better outcome is to actually land it before the election. And that might be difficult, but we just need to rise to that challenge and put it across the line. If, again, it's of a quality that is worth putting to notification. But we're a long way off that at the moment. Now, we've finished the questions. I'll close the questions. Thank you, staff. Thanks, Erin, Ross, and John. been quite a lot of points put forward in the questions. Are there any other debating points to make on this engagement plan? Support it, so we put it to the vote? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Please don't move away yet. There's not far to go, but could somebody move the motions for the Forward Work Programme of 13?
Yes, thank you.
And I've got councillors Mulholland and Henderson. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. There's no extraordinary business, but just before we close, members, I'm really grateful for the discussion. Oh, the summaries moving with Councillor Afeso and Councillor Dalton will be the second. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Before you go, members, we've got the departure of a key staff member, and that's Alistair Cribbins, I should say, at the back there. Come, stand up, Alistair. Alistair is on his way from us, and he is heading towards Wakakotahi. So he will put them straight. Alistair is our principal transport advisor in David Hawkey's unit, the Growth Transport and Infrastructure Strategy unit, a unit that I have a lot to do with. I really rate that unit highly. It's our check on Wakakotahi, it's our check on Auckland Transport, and there's some really talented individuals in that unit. Alistair's been one of those for a long period through some pretty demanding focuses like ATAP, the Auckland Transport Alignment Project, that was of Alistair's making, and some testy times with the Ministry of Transport there, Alistair, and you got through it. You've also been working on a unique body of work on micro-mobility, and we'll see a bit more of that. And of course, you've been our go-to person in transport strategy on the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. Alistair, we wish you a massive good journey on the Waka at Wakakotahi. Thanks for everything you've left in the City of Auckland on your watch. It's immense. Thank you. A round of applause to round off the departure. And we close the meeting. Thank you all, members, and thank you to the staff.